Aloe vera. You've definitely seen it, probably in a bottle of after-sun lotion. But this plant is so much more than just a sunburn soother. It has this legendary past. They literally called it the plant of immortality thousands of years ago. And what's really cool is that today, modern science is finally catching up and decoding exactly how this ancient remedy works. So let's dive in and see what the science is telling us.
So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start our journey in ancient Egypt with the plant of the pharaohs. Then we're going to put on our lab coats and look inside the green pharmacy. After that, we'll decode its healing power at a cellular level, see how its benefits are way more than just skin deep, and finally, I'll give you some really important tips for choosing your aloe wisely.
All right, first up, let's take a little trip back in time. Because really, to get where we're going with the science, you first have to appreciate just how long aloe vera has been a huge part of human history. And what a history it is. I mean, think about this. As far back as 4000 BC, we're seeing engravings of Egyptians calling it the plant of immortality. They even used it as a burial gift for pharaohs. The first written record of its medicinal use shows up on a Sumerian clay tablet way back in 2200 BC. Then you find it in one of the world's oldest medical books, the Ebers Papyrus. Legend even says Alexander the Great conquered entire islands just to get enough aloe for his wounded soldiers. It's just incredible.
This amazing track record really makes you wonder, right? What did all these ancient cultures know? How did they figure out its power without a single laboratory or clinical trial? Well, that's the big question, and we're going to start unraveling it by looking at what today's science is finally discovering.
So how did this one plant do all of that? Well, to understand why it works, we've got to look at what's inside that thick green leaf. It's time to open up this little green pharmacy.
Okay, this is super important. Not all parts of the aloe leaf are the same. In fact, there are two very, very different components. First, you've got that clear inner gel. That's the soothing, healing part, packed with these complex sugars called polysaccharides. This is the good stuff, what you want in your products. But right under the skin of the leaf, there's this thin layer of yellow latex. And this stuff contains compounds that are a harsh laxative and can actually cause some serious side effects if it's not removed properly.
And what's inside that inner gel? Well, it's not just one or two magic ingredients. Scientists have actually identified over 75 potentially active compounds, all working together. It's like this complex chemical cocktail that nature has perfected over millions of years. And those 75-plus compounds fall into a bunch of key categories. You've got your essential vitamins and minerals, which are crucial for just basic cell function. You have things like fatty acids that fight inflammation. And most importantly, you have these special complex sugars or polysaccharides. And there's one in particular called acemannan. Remember that name, it's a real powerhouse. It's this whole symphony of compounds working in harmony that gives aloe its incredible power.
Okay, so now that we have that chemical blueprint, let's get to the really fascinating science. How does aloe vera actually help our skin heal? This is where that ancient wisdom really starts to line up with modern cell biology.
Now, before we jump into the data, just a quick refresher on what wound healing even is. Think of it like a biological ballet. It needs cells to move to the injury, it needs them to multiply to create new tissue, and it needs them to lay down a protein called collagen to rebuild the skin's structure.
Okay, check this out. This is where we can see how specific compounds from the aloe plant are basically choreographing that healing ballet. So let's just walk through this. Up top, a compound called alloecine actually increases cell migration. It's like telling the repair cells to get to the wound and fast. Then you have aloin, which acts as a powerful antioxidant, cutting down on damage. And then there's our friend acemannan, which tells the cells to ramp up production of type 1 collagen, the main building block of skin. It's a brilliant, multi-pronged attack at a cellular level.
And this isn't just stuff we're seeing in a petri dish. When scientists test aloe on animals, these benefits translate directly into real-world results. We're talking faster wound closure, more and better organized collagen, and a major reduction in inflammation right at the injury site.
So, the million-dollar question, does it work for humans? Well, the clinical evidence is pretty strong in some key areas. Multiple human trials have found it's effective for helping heal burns, C-section wounds, and skin graft donor sites. Now, it's important to be honest here. The science is still evolving. For some other conditions like dermatitis from radiation therapy, the results from clinical trials have been mixed.
But the scientific investigation doesn't stop at the skin, not by a long shot. Researchers are now looking into how aloe's unique chemistry might help us when we take it internally, which could validate even more of its historical uses.
And the research is buzzing. I mean, just look at this chart. There are dozens and dozens of studies going on. We see over 40 studies looking into its anti-cancer potential, 30 focused on digestive health, and a whole bunch more investigating how it might help manage blood sugar. These are really exciting new frontiers for this ancient plant.
In the world of digestive health, the results are pretty compelling. For instance, one major clinical trial tested an aloe vera syrup on patients with GERD, that's acid reflux. And what they found was that the syrup significantly cut down on symptoms like heartburn and regurgitation, performing just as well as some common medications.
And what about metabolic health? Well, another clinical trial looked at people with pre-diabetes. The results were pretty striking. Taking aloe vera daily significantly lowered their fasting blood glucose levels. That's the amount of sugar in your blood when you haven't eaten. It suggests aloe could be a really useful tool for managing blood sugar.
So, with all this incredible science, you're probably thinking, okay, this stuff sounds amazing. How do I make sure I'm getting the good stuff? Well, that brings us perfectly to our final section, how to navigate the journey from the plant to the product you buy. Here are a few really key things to look for. First, check the percentage. A quality product is going to be over 99% pure aloe. Second, read that label very, very carefully. You want inner leaf gel, not whole leaf juice, which might contain that harsh latex. Third, do a little homework on the brand. Make sure they're reputable. And finally, think about the form, whether you want a gel, a juice, or a powder based on what you're using it for.
And listen, if you need any more convincing on why that whole leaf versus inner gel difference is so critical, just look at this. The National Library of Medicine flat out recommends avoiding aloe latex because of some really serious side effects. We're talking everything from stomach cramps to kidney problems. So it couldn't be clearer. Knowing what's in your product is absolutely essential.
The story of aloe vera is just such a perfect example of ancient wisdom meeting modern science and being proven right. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we can scientifically prove the power of a plant that the pharaohs were using, what other incredible remedies from the natural world are just out there, waiting for us to rediscover them?